So there has been a lot of scientific discoveries, so a lot of scientific knowledge since Darwin's book on the origin of species up to today. So if he would have this knowledge, this scientific knowledge, do you think he would have had a different view?
I can't possibly speculate about what he himself would have thought, but I think he would have had a very difficult time making the case he did. Let me give you just one more example of a really fundamental problem with not only neo-Darwinism, but all even post-neo-Darwinian evolutionary theories that have been proposed. Scientists have discovered that if you want, in the process of what's called body plan formation, as you move from the fertilized egg through the various stages of cell division to cell differentiation, as the different cells become muscle or bone or nerves or the various organ systems. That process of animal development is very tightly and carefully choreographed. That certain cells turn on, the genetic information for making certain types of cells turn on at one time, at very precise times, and others at other precise times. And as they've mapped out the flow of information that's required to coordinate that process of animal development, and I wish I had a visual aid right now, but it looks like an integrated circuit. And I have a picture of this in the book Darwin's Doubt. Much of this work was done at Caltech by a scientist named Eric Davidson, and these circuits, they're called developmental gene regulatory networks. And what Davidson discovered is that they involve gene expression. So a gene turns on a certain protein at a certain time, which regulates the turning on of another gene or the shutting off of another gene, which in turn turns on something else or shuts off something else, all at the right time. So it's a network of genes and their products, gene products, either proteins or regulatory RNAs, that are coordinating the turning on and turning off of genes for the production of certain products at just the right time to service certain cells and cause the differentiation of different types of cells during animal development. It's a phenomenally beautiful and tightly choreographed process. What Davidson realized is that if you perturb any of the essential elements of these gene regulatory networks, the system as a whole just shuts down, and the animal ceases to develop. It gets destroyed. So it illustrates something in engineering that's known as the constraints problem, or the constraints principle. The more it's tightly integrated a system, the more difficult it is to perturb any part of the system without defect to the whole. So here's the problem. You've got this integrated circuit of information control called a gene regulatory network. It's absolutely necessary to build an animal form to get to full development of an animal form, but it can't be perturbed. So how do you ever mutate or change one animal body plan into another if the underlying developmental gene regulatory network, which is necessary to build the animal body plan, can't be changed? It imposes a limit on large-scale morphological change. And that problem applies not only to old-fashioned neo-Darwinism, the standard textbook theory of evolution that we all learn, but it applies to all the new theories that have been proposed: natural genetic engineering and self-organization and neo-Lamarckian epigenetic inheritance. And there's a whole suite of new evolutionary theories that are being proposed to try to solve the problems that neo-Darwinism faces. But those theories have failed as well. They don't explain the origin of the information you need to build new form, and they don't explain how you can perturb these gene regulatory networks. So you have really big unsolved problems. Eric Davidson, who was no friend of intelligent design, was also deeply, deeply skeptical and dismissive of attempts to solve these problems within neo-Darwinian framework.